What is the natural diet of human beings? We keep arguing about this. Are we built to eat plants or meat? Some say humans are natural vegetarians. Others say we are natural meat eaters. So, what are we? Most people think the answer is obvious, but it isn't. Because if you get this wrong, you might be misunderstanding your own body. And the answer isn't simple. It is buried in our biology, our history, and the way we eat. Now, look around you. We eat rice and vegetables, meat and fish, lentils and dairy. In our country, vegetarian food is almost treated as a religious principle. In other parts of the world, large communities eat almost nothing but meat. So, what is the natural food for humans? It is a surprisingly simple question, but the answers people give are anything but simple. Both sides sound confident, both claim science, but they can't both be right. And the answer you accept here might change the way how you see your body, your health, and even your relationship with food for the rest of your life. We're going to step back, look at the science, the evidence from anatomy, evolution, nutrition, and even anthropology, and ask an honest question. Is it true that humans are naturally vegetarian or naturally non-vegetarian? Before we go further, a quick clarification. In this video, I am not going to use the term non-vegetarian because that word already assumes vegetarian is the default and everything else is just a deviation. That is not a scientific way to look at food. So I will use simple terms: plant-based diet and meat-based or mixed diet. So if you came in thinking this is a pro-veg or anti-veg video, it is not. Also, this is not a recruitment video for any diet. It is an explanation of what humans are and what that means for how we eat. And we will stick to science and evidence. With that clear, let's begin. You have probably heard this kind of argument. Humans are naturally vegetarian. Our body is built to eat plants. Meat-based food is unnatural and even harmful. People who say this usually point to a few things about our biology. First, the length of our digestive tract. If you look at carnivores, animals that eat meat exclusively, like lions or tigers, they have a relatively short digestive tract. Meat is dense and easy to digest, so they don't need long tubing to process it. Plant eaters, on the other hand, often have a much longer digestive tract. Grass, leaves, and fibrous plant material are harder to break down, and the food needs to stay inside longer while microbes and enzymes work on it. Now humans, our digestive tract is longer than that of typical carnivores. So some people say, see, this means we are more like herbivores than carnivores. Second, our teeth. Lions and tigers have long, sharp, tearing teeth. Canines and carnations that are built to rip meat apart. But humans, we have a mix. We have a few sharp canines, yes, but most of our teeth are relatively flat. Flat, broad teeth are good for grinding, not tearing. That is exactly what herbivores like cows or goats have. They grind grass, leaves, and stems. So some people say our teeth are designed for chewing plant material, not ripping meat. Third, our jaw movement. Carnivores basically move their jaws up and down. That is enough to grip prey and tear it. Humans can move our jaws side to side. That grinding side to side motion is typical for plant eaters. Even now, when you chew something like a vegetable, your jaw slides sideways to grind it. Fourth, something inside our mouth, salivary amylase. In our saliva, we have an enzyme called amylase. This enzyme starts breaking down starch, that is plant carbohydrates, right in the mouth. Carnivores, they generally don't have much of this enzyme. Starch-rich plant food is not their main diet, but humans do have it. So again, some people say this is a sign that our natural diet is based on plants. And at first glance, it can seem like we are built more for plants than for tearing into raw prey. When you put all of this together, longer digestive tract, flat teeth, side to side jaw movement, and salivary amylase, some conclude humans are naturally plant eaters. Meat is a later unnatural addition to our diet. But that conclusion depends on looking at only half the picture. And that is exactly where the argument starts to break. To see the full picture, we have to stop comparing ourselves only to carnivores and start comparing humans to herbivores as well. So, when we look at the fuller story, it shows that humans are somewhere in the middle. First, let us talk about the digestive tract again. It is true that our digestive tract is longer than a lion's or a tiger's. But if you compare humans to actual herbivores, the picture flips. Think of a cow or a goat. Their digestive systems are much longer than ours. Cows, for example, have a multi-chambered stomach plus a long intestine. They are optimized to ferment huge amounts of grass and fibrous material. Humans are nowhere near that. So, our tract is longer than that of carnivores, but shorter and simpler than that of strict herbivores. In other words, we don't neatly fit into either category. Our teeth include sharp canines. Yes, they are less dramatic than a lion's, but they are still there. These canines were historically useful for biting into meat, fruit, and even through tough plant material. And our jaw can move both up, down, and side to side, so we can chew meat and grind plants. Then there is a digestive chemistry. Yes, we have salivary amylase for starch, but we also have enzymes to digest fat and protein from animal sources. Our body makes pepsin in the stomach, lipases for fat, and various proteases that break down animal proteins. So, we have tools for plant-based food and we also have tools for animal-based food. When you look at all of this together, teeth, jaws, digestive system, enzymes, what you see is a mixed system. Which brings us to the right word for humans, omnivores. We are neither strictly predators nor strict plant eaters. Our body has features of both. Humans are biologically adapted to eat both plant and animal matter. So far, we've looked at the body. Now let us look at behavior. Because what we are built to eat and what we actually ate are not always the same thing. If we look at how early humans actually lived, the natural vegetarian argument becomes even more complicated. For most of human history, our ancestors were hunter-gatherers. They did eat fruits, tubers, roots, leaves, nuts, and seeds, but they also hunted animals and gathered insects, eggs, and fish whenever they could. This isn't a guess. We know this from archaeology, fossil remains, and studies of modern hunter-gatherer societies that still exist today. Even now, in parts of the world, people live that way. They move with seasons, forage for plants, and hunt animals. They eat a mixed, flexible diet, plants and animals. And this lifestyle is not just a few thousand years old. Homo sapiens, or modern humans, have existed for at least 300,000 years. During most of the time, we relied on this omnivorous hunter-gatherer lifestyle. Plants were primary, but animal food, meat, fish, eggs, insects, was not just a side dish. For many groups, it was a crucial source of protein, fat, and micronutrients. A major turning point in human history was agriculture, which emerged only about 12,000 years ago. When we learned to grow our own food, crops like wheat, rice, barley, millets, we stopped being fully dependent on what we could find in the wild. We began to settle in one place. Towns and cities appeared. But this doesn't mean humans suddenly became vegetarian. Even after agriculture, humans continued to raise and eat animals. Chickens, goats, sheep, cattle, pigs. In fact, in many places, animal-based food became a status symbol, a sign of wealth, or in colder regions, a survival necessity. Take places like the Arctic or northern parts of Canada. In many of those regions, plant life is extremely limited. The ground is frozen. The growing season is short. For indigenous groups living there, the primary food is meat, fish, seals, caribou, muskox, and so on. In such environments, a strict, purely vegetarian diet would be extremely difficult, maybe even impossible to sustain. So biologically, culturally, and ecologically, humans have historically been flexible eaters. We are not locked into one single natural diet, but there is one part of the story that changes everything. Here's a fascinating point many people overlook. the link between meat and our brain. Archaeologists and anthropologists have found that animal food, especially meat, played a key role in human evolution. Before modern humans, our ancestors like Homo erectus learned to control fire. Fire did something very important. It made meat easier to digest. Raw meat is tough and can be hard on the gut, but cooked meat is softer, safer, and more digestible. When early humans started eating cooked meat, two things happened. They got more nutrient-dense food. They spent less energy digesting it. Meat is rich in protein and fat. These are the building blocks of the body, including the brain. Fat in particular is a dense source of energy. Compared to many plant foods, you get a lot of calories and nutrients from relatively small amounts of meat. Our digestive system has to work hard to break food down. That work itself burns energy. So if you get food that is already easy to digest and nutrient rich, you effectively free up energy. That extra energy can be used elsewhere. For early humans, a lot of that extra energy went to the brain. Our brain is a very energy hungry organ. The brain uses a large share of the energy we consume, roughly 1/5 in adults. As our ancestors started eating more nutrient dense foods, especially cooked meat, there was more energy available for the brain to grow and develop. Anthropologists now argue that this shift helped our brains become larger, more complex, and more capable. In other words, the very brain you're using to watch this video may have been shaped in part by what we chose to eat, including meat. Now, here is something fundamental. All energy in the food chain ultimately comes from plants. Through photosynthesis, plants convert sunlight into chemical energy. Animals cannot do this. So even the meat we eat is indirectly derived from plants. But there is a key difference. In animals, nutrients like protein and fat are already synthesized and concentrated. Here we introduce a new word, nutrient density. How much useful nutrition can you get from a given amount of food? Now let us zoom in on the nutrients themselves. When we talk about food, what we're really talking about is energy, macronutrients and micronutrients. From a nutrient density view, animal foods and plant foods are different. Animal-based foods like meat, fish, eggs, dairy are very rich in protein. They are high in certain fats. They are a good source of vitamins like B12, iron, and other nutrients that are hard to get in sufficient amounts from plants alone. Plant-based foods like vegetables, fruits, grains, legumes, nuts, seeds are very rich in fiber. They are a good source of carbohydrates. They provide many vitamins and minerals, but often in forms that are less concentrated or harder to absorb. If you want a lot of protein and fat in a small volume of food, animal sources are very efficient. That is what we call nutrient-dense food. If you want to get that same amount of calories and proteins from plants, you usually need to eat more volume. That is why strict herbivores like cows, horses, or elephants spend so much of their time eating. They have to consume huge amounts of fibrous plant material to get enough energy. Carnivores eat less often. After a big meal, they can rest. Humans are somewhere in between. We can eat a small, dense meal of meat and feel satisfied. We can also eat a large plate of rice and vegetables and feel full. But the efficiency of meat in providing nutrients explains why, in many traditional societies, animal food is highly valued. The same efficiency, however, can become a problem in modern times. If you eat too much meat too often, you can easily consume more calories, fat, and certain nutrients than your body needs. Studies have shown that high consumption of red and processed meat is linked to higher risks of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and some cancers. So the strength of meat, its nutrient density, also makes it a risk if overused. Because meat is so easy to overeat in a calorie-rich modern food environment, overconsumption becomes a real risk. In other words, the problem is not meat itself, it is excess. On the other hand, plant-based diets are typically high in fiber. Fiber supports digestion and helps regulate nutrient absorption. They also tend to be lower in cholesterol. So the risk of overconsumption related diseases is generally lower. But there is a trade-off. With enough planning and variety, a plant-based diet can be nutritionally complete, but it usually demands more attention than a diet that includes animal-derived foods. Certain nutrients like vitamin B12, iron, and omega-3 fatty acids are harder to obtain from a strictly plant-based diet. Not impossible, but it requires planning. Whereas in a diet that includes meat or fish, these nutrients are easier to access. But how we choose to eat today is not just about biology. It is also about ethics, environment, and culture. Let us talk about environment first. So in the food chain, plants are the base. If we eat plants directly, we cut out a step. If we eat meat, we are eating animals that were fed plants. In that process, a lot of energy is lost. For example, a cow eats a certain amount of grain. It converts that grain into muscle and fat, but it doesn't convert all of it. Some energy is lost in digestion, movement, heat, and so on. So to get a kilogram of meat, we need much more plant material than if we ate the plants ourselves. This means more land use, more water, more greenhouse gas emissions, especially from ruminant animals. So when you eat plants directly, you're using energy more efficiently. When you eat animals, you're adding an extra step and losing energy in the process. That is why meat production requires more resources and produces more emissions. In contrast, plant-based food production is generally more efficient and sustainable. So if the goal is minimizing environmental impact, plant-based diets often have an advantage. Then there are ethical questions. If you care about animal welfare, plant-based diets avoid killing animals for food. Some people choose vegetarian or vegan lifestyles because they don't want to contribute to animal suffering. That is a valid moral position. Modern agriculture makes it possible to survive, even thrive, without directly killing animals. But it's also true that in some places, people have no choice. In the Arctic, or in places like Himalayas, or in many indigenous communities, plant-based options are extremely limited. There, meat is not a luxury. It is a necessity for survival. So, if you insist that only vegetarianism is natural or moral, you're overlooking the biological flexibility of humans and the realities of how people actually live in different environments. We already have seen the development of plant-based meat and lab-grown meat. Let us wait for that if you are really concerned about killing animals. In many societies, especially in India, vegetarianism is often treated as a moral badge. You see signs in restaurants, pure vegetarian. The word pure is loaded. It suggests that eating meat is impure or dirty. But what does pure even mean here? Biologically, meat is not dirty, nor is plant food magically clean. Food is not pure or impure. It is just nutrients, materials that our body break down and use. The idea that vegetarian food is somehow purer is more about culture and religion than biology. In many Indian traditions, vegetarianism is often linked to ahimsa or non-violence. But even within those traditions, not all vegetarian diets are the same. Some people avoid only meat but still eat eggs and dairy. Some avoid eggs, dairy, and even certain plant products like onions and garlic. Some call this purer. But scientifically, there is no scale of purity in diets. What matters more is health, sustainability, and fairness to animals and people. So let us come back to the health side. If you eat a strictly plant-based diet, some nutrients are harder to get in enough amounts. Vitamin B12 is almost entirely found in animal products. Iron from plants is less easily absorbed than iron from meat. Omega-3 fatty acids, the kind that strongly support brain and heart health, are most concentrated in fish and some animal fats. Complete protein, that is protein with all essential amino acids in one food, is easier to get from animal sources. That doesn't mean a plant-based diet is unhealthy. Well-planned, vegetarian and vegan diets can support normal growth, energy and long-term health. Some studies associated well-planned plant-based diets with lower rates of heart disease, high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes. But the key is planning. Without attention, B12 deficiency, low iron or low omega-3 levels can creep in. So you need to be very careful when choosing an all plant-based diet. On the other side, if you eat a lot of red and processed meat like bacon, sausages, ham, salami, hot dogs, and large quantities of beef and pork, research shows something different. The World Health Organization has said that processed meat is carcinogenic to humans and red meat is probably carcinogenic, mainly linked to colorectal cancer. Studies also show higher risks of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and some cancers when these foods are eaten in large amounts, especially alongside a sedentary lifestyle. That doesn't mean one bite of meat will hurt you, but when meat becomes the center of every meal, and especially when it is highly processed, the long-term health risks go up. As I have mentioned before, the dose makes the poison. So, if humans are omnivores and both plant and animal foods have strengths and weaknesses, is there a middle way that fits our biology and our world today? Many health organizations, including the WHO and bodies like the US Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, now talk about a flexitarian diet. What does that mean? It is not strict vegetarian. It is not all meat all the time. It is a diet that uses plants as a base and includes animal products in moderation when they are available. Studies show that this kind of pattern is linked to lower rates of chronic disease, better weight control, and better long-term health. This, of course, assumes a generally active lifestyle, including regular exercise to keep our body in a healthy condition. From an evolutionary perspective, this actually echoes how humans have eaten for most of our history. A broad mix of plant foods, animal food when it is accessible, no rigid rule of never or always. So in many ways, the modern flexitarian approach is evolutionarily and nutritionally sensible. Now let's talk about the labels: vegetarian, vegan, and non-vegetarian. Vegetarian usually means someone who avoids meat and fish, but many still eat eggs and dairy. Vegan takes it a step further. Vegans avoid all animal-based foods. No meat, no fish, no eggs, no dairy, no honey. For many vegans, it is not just a diet, it is a philosophy, a belief that it is possible and morally right to live without using animal products. Some people go even further than that. There are communities where even certain plant foods are avoided. For example, in some traditional groups, onions, garlic, or tubers are considered non-pure or non-vegetarian for religious reasons. Beef is avoided by many Hindus. Pork is forbidden in Islam. Shellfish is avoided in some traditional Christian diets. And many religious communities have their own food rules. This is not biology. This is culture and religion. And that is fine. But when we mix biology with cultural purity, we can get confused. Saying only vegetarian food is pure or only meat is natural is not a scientific statement. It is a value statement. The science is clearer. Our body can handle both plant and animal food. Both have risks if overused or poorly chosen. Neither is morally pure by itself. Now let us return to the original question. Are humans naturally vegetarian or non-vegetarian? If we look at our body structure, our digestive system, the behavior of our ancestors, and the way modern humans live in different environments, honest answer is, we are neither strictly one nor the other. We are omnivores with flexibility. In some places, a plant-based diet is the only practical option. In others, animal-based food is essential for survival. Biologically, the most resilient and healthy approach is not rigid purity, but thoughtful balance. When you become very rigid and say that I must eat only plants or I must eat meat every day, you risk nutrient deficiencies if you ignore the weak points of our diet, or chronic disease risk if you overconsume animal fats and processed meats, or moral anxiety when you judge other people's food choices as wrong just because they differ from yours. So the final position is not shouting only this is right. The best position is know your body's needs, respect the environment. Be clear about your own values when it comes to animals, whether that means avoiding animal products, using them sparingly, or including them in a responsible way. Choose a diet that is balanced, varied, and sustainable for you. Make your own choice and don't let others label you or judge you for it. What you've decided to eat is entirely your choice. You can choose based on your culture, your religion, or your values. Or you can be scientific and choose based on biology and health. Entirely your choice. At the end of the day, food is not a holy symbol or a political banner. Food is a biological requirement. It is a shared human need. We can choose to eat mainly plants if that aligns with our values, our health, and our environment. We can choose to eat animal products in moderation if that suits our body. We can even mix and match across a lifetime, season by season, place by place. What matters most is not the label on the plate, but the understanding behind the choice. If you eat meat, understand its health and environmental impact. If you choose vegetarian or vegan food, understand its nutritional gaps and how to fill them. And if possible, keep some flexibility. because humans are not designed for one rigid rule. Now I want to say something to the people who might watch this video and feel strongly about it. If you disagree with this, that is completely fine. But instead of turning this into a shouting match, go look at the evidence yourself. Human evolution, nutrition science, environmental data. Because this topic is too important for slogans. It deserves understanding. If you comment under this video with the intention of picking a fight, trying to trap me or challenge me into a debate, I may not reply. And I'm very unlikely to accept that kind of an invitation. That is not because I'm afraid of being wrong. It is because I don't see personal online debates as the best way to understand complex questions about food, health, evolution, and ethics. Food is not a war. It is a conversation between our bodies, our values, and our planet. And that is exactly what I wanted this video to be. So the next time someone says humans are naturally vegetarian or meant to eat meat, you will know that reality is more nuanced. We are not made for one perfect diet. We are made to adapt. And that ability to adapt is exactly what made us human.